I would say prepare for your eventual exit sooner than later if that is on your goal list, because the earlier you prepare, the easier it will be, and you will be able to exit whenever you feel like it. You won't have to continue working longer than you want to if you have all your books in order. So, if you already have an established business, that might mean going ahead and meeting with an advisor, even if you're not necessarily wanting to sell for a couple of years. Just go ahead, get a valuation, like see where you stand, get those tips that they might be able to offer you on what channels you can grow to get the maximum value out of your business.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Zoncom podcast. This is Andrew Erickson, your host as always. Today I'm very excited to talk to my friend Elaine. Elaine is a online entrepreneur and she recently sold her business for a good chunk of change. She's based in Orlando, but she's actually a digital nomad, and that is where I met her. I met her while my wife and I were on the road doing our 32 countries in 12 months. We have listened to the first 20 episodes of this podcast. If you want to hear more about that journey, we actually started this podcast while we were on the road. And Elaine is someone we met in the middle of our trip, and we're really loved meeting her and her boyfriend. And we're here today to hear about her story. So Elaine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I'm excited to get caught up and chat a little bit more about everything that's been going on.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. And Elaine actually reached out to me on Facebook a couple weeks ago or whatever, and kind of mentioned that she had, just wanted to reconnect, and mentioned she had sold her business and she was doing this and doing that. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Let's catch up. Let's hang out. Let's record it and let other people hear our Amazon conversation as we talk about this stuff. So, Elaine, I appreciate you letting us record the chit chat.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We know that you're a digital nomad and that you're an online entrepreneur, but why don't you give us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I am an e-commerce entrepreneur primarily, though I do sell a little bit on Amazon as well. Started about 5 years ago. This was my first e-commerce business, but not my first. Well, kind of. I started an Etsy store when I was in high school, and that was really my first foray into the entrepreneurship world.
Nice.
Had some success with that. Made a few $1,000s. I funded myself a trip to France when I was in high school.
Wow.
I felt like a really cool kid back then. but I really enjoyed that process, and that's what sparked the entrepreneurial bug in me. And I knew that someday I wanted to own a business and run that full time to have the freedom and flexibility that gives you. It took me a while though to actually get to that point where I was able to build a business to the point that it would support me full time. I worked a couple of years in corporate. I was a data analyst for a while, but I still had that itch, that bug to be able to work for myself. So I did research.
I want to hear more about this high school Etsy store, right? Because that's a big thing that a lot of I started. I don't know if I told you this, but I actually started on Etsy as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Etsy, and so for those of you who are listening, Etsy is a handmade store or whatever. I think a lot of people know what it is, and it's really, really easy to get started on it. Great place to kind of get your whistle wet, as they say. So Elaine, tell me, can you share the products you were selling on there?
Yeah, I was selling Mardi Gras masquerade masks.
Nice.
This is about 12, 13 years ago. So Etsy was in its early stages, but it was really very crafty marketplace.
Sure.
There wasn't so many international sellers on there at the time. It's very different than it is today. Today, it's obviously it's huge. There's so much more there than there was back then. But it was an interesting foray. So I always loved being crafty. I'm an artist. I like making things, and so it was a natural fit. And yeah, it was surprisingly popular. I worked with a couple wedding planners to do masquerade weddings. That was very trendy, maybe 10, 12 years ago. So it's my first little entrepreneurial venture.
Wow, that's awesome. So you just set up your own store and you took custom orders, or you had your own kind of line of products you were making?
Yeah, everything was through Etsy. But you have your storefront in Etsy, and you list products. It's just like Amazon or Shopify. Take your pictures, list your products. You can run your ads in there. And I was importing base products from China. So I would import the mask bases and accessories and then paint them, design them, add trims to them, make them unique, build them from there.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. So you were already sourcing, building an e-commerce brand, or at least a storefront, and sourcing from China back when you were in high school.
Yes,
How did you
yes.
find the suppliers in China?
Alibaba.
Alibaba. There you
Alibaba. I
go.
just researched and that's where it was where you'd go back then and I think it still is, today.
Nice, cool. So you already successful starting at. What did your parents think of that?
So it took them a while to be on board. I
Uh
learned about Etsy in the Girls Life magazine when I was like 13. And like I said, I always loved crafts and making things. And I said, Mom, I really want to sell my crafts on this website. And she told me no. She told me, no, this is skeptic. This is, this is sketchy. You can't, not going to let you have an account and do this. But when I was 16, finally won her over. I was like, hey, like this is a good opportunity. Like, please let me do it. And she agreed to it. And that's when I got started.
Wow. And did you have to buy the materials before you sold them, right? Or did you collect the
Yeah,
money first and then buy the materials and then ship it out?
I had to buy the materials first.
And did you do a proper little like savings business budget plan, or you kind of just like, let's just get this stuff going and get it out the door and figure it out later?
I honestly don't remember. I don't remember. I remember ordering maybe about 20 masks.
Huh.
Like it wasn't a lot. To get started, and then I designed them different ways, and then I started making more of the same masks that were very popular, and built it out from there.
Wow. So you realize that if you've been selling online for 10, 12, 13 years, you are one of the most senior people we've ever had on this podcast.
I
it,
don't know if I count it quite like that, but
how,
sure thing.
how old are you now?
I am 27.
27. Oh man, that's incredible. That's awesome. Cool. So let's jump in. So let's fast forward a little bit. You said that you worked as a data analyst for a little bit, and you kind of started. How did you get started into your next brand?
I worked as a data analyst for 3, 4 years, and I liked that. I was good at that job. I liked the people I worked with, but it was also not as fulfilling, and I didn't like that I wasn't able to travel. That was another one of my dreams, was to be able to go different places, have more independence, be able to work from wherever I wanted. Like I didn't have that option in those jobs, and so I still knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I struggled to figure out what that would be. Like, what do I don't have any like special skills. I don't have any um, I didn't know what I would be able to sell. I didn't feel like I had expertise in anything. Um, but then I discovered one thing I was also very passionate about is health and fitness and working out. Um, and I found out about this fitness product, this sport that I ended up really loving. And I thought it kind of clicked in my mind. I was like, why don't I make this into my business? Why don't I start selling these products? It's not very popular, and it seems like there's not a ton of places you can buy this. It's not like you can buy this gym equipment in a store. It's like this could be a good e-commerce opportunity.
Nice. So you just so you had your day job, and you thought like you kind of identified the niche, but it was part of your passion too, right?
Yeah, it was. It's something that I really love.
And so you set up. So I guess you just used Shopify and just set up your website, and then it was more of a drop ship model, right, rather than a private label model, or is it kind of
When
both?
I started, it was purely dropship. It turned into private label a couple years in, but I started out just doing drop shipping, following kind of kind of the Anton method. I followed Johnny FD, who's a very popular digital nomad, and he was a proponent of the Anton method of drop shipping, which is like higher ticket items, um, working with local suppliers when possible. I didn't take any courses or anything, but I watched like their free webinars, and I was too cheap. I didn't make much money, so I was like, okay, what free resources can I find to learn how to do this? And there's a ton of information out there.
Nice. And then wait, tell us a little more about these mentor uh influencer people, like because these are actually people aren't really too big in the Amazon space, so we're probably
Okay.
most of the people aren't familiar with them. So who are they, and then what do they kind of teach, and what's kind of their sort of their business model idea that they're pushing?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more of these e-commerce influencers now than there were 5 or 6 years ago even. But back then, Johnny FD is he's he has courses on several different things, but he is a proponent of drop shipping higher ticket items, which is things that cost more money. Obviously, you get higher margins and you deal with less customers, so you don't have as much day to day dealing with people as you would with like a smaller ticket item. And he was also a digital nomad. So his kind of lifestyle philosophy he's promoting is to be able to build a business that allows you to be able to travel and work from anywhere. The digital nomad concept. So that's how I was really introduced to this and realized that there's a whole community of people that are doing this, making a living off of online businesses and being able to travel. It was like a dream for me, and I got really inspired. And I was like, okay, this is something I really want to do. Um, and then Anton Crawley, I believe is his last name. I'm not as familiar with him. I only know him through kind of following Johnny FD for a while. But he has a drop shipping course. I think it's called the Dropship Lifestyle. That's also teaching you kind of step by step how to build like a high ticket drop shipping store.
Wow. Yeah, and so Johnny FD, he has a podcast called Travel Like a Boss and Travel and Invest Like a Boss as well. And he's based in Bangkok, Thailand, and that's actually where we met. Was at his conference in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Yes, yes.
That was a fun one because my wife and I, Allison, we were traveling around, like I said, 12 months for 32 countries in 12 months is what we ended up doing at the end when we counted it all up.
Wow.
And Chiang Mai was like right in the dead center of our trip, right? And we knew that like January was like a really nice time to be in Chiang Mai, and we're like, okay, cool, we'll plan on being in Southeast Asia around that time. And Thailand's like my favorite country in the whole world. Sorry, America. I love America too. America's like a good place to live, but Thailand's like maybe number one. So, but we went to that conference, and actually we sort of centered it around the conference just because we were going to be in Southeast Asia around that time anyways. And I thought like, oh, cool. Well, we can totally write off our Thailand trip if we go to this conference. And that what's that called? The Nomad Lifestyle or something? Or what was it called?
The Digital Nomad Summit.
That's what it was. Yeah, Digital Nomad Summit. I'll
Mhm.
make sure to put a link in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. I have no idea what's happening to it during quarantine, but I'm sure it'll come back eventually, and it's a great place to go if you're in that part of the world at that part of the season. And we bumped into you there, you and your boyfriend, and I was with my wife, and we just started. I think we just literally like stood at the same cocktail table or something, right?
Yes, yes. We met so many people at that conference. It was awesome. But you guys were some of the people that we've actually, kind of stayed in contact with. I still have your contact info. You guys were very, very inspiring to us, just hearing how well you were doing within the Amazon space. And yeah, we hit it off. It was a really great time.
Yeah, I love talking to you guys because well, how do I say this? You were so like eager and like excited about everything. I was like, oh yes, awesome. Someone else is excited about all this stuff too. This is fantastic. So okay, so anyways, I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit. So we're talking to Johnny. You're listening to Johnny FD, hearing about the drop shipping
Yes.
thing. You set up your own store. So tell us kind of like so the drop shipping, just so everyone's aware, the you're marketing other people's products. So an audience is coming to your website. You sell large ticket items. Large ticket meaning like $500, right? $1,000 or something.
Yeah, it can depend. Anywhere from like 200 to $1,000 could be considered large ticket,
Perfect. Okay, but not
depending.
not like $20
Yeah.
trinkets. So these are multi-hundred,
Yes.
maybe multi-$1,000 ticket items. And so you're doing the marketing, bringing people to your site, and then they, or correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of do the marketing, bring them to your
Yeah.
site, and then hopefully they buy from your store, right?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. What kind of things did you do to do that marketing to bring people to your shop?
When starting out, I did a lot of Google Shopping ads. They were also not as competitive as they are today, but it's still definitely worth looking into, especially if you sell a product that's very searchable. Google Shopping ads, a lot of Google ads. I didn't start out with Facebook ads. We grew into that over time, but when I was first starting, Google Shopping was very, very profitable for us.
How do you know if your product's searchable?
Yeah, I think it's that's a good question. I think it's something that ideally is something that is not something you just go down to Walmart and pick up at the local store, something that somebody is looking to buy online, something that's not like a commodity product where there's a million people selling it. If you have something that somebody is specifically looking for, let's say you're looking for a soccer necklace, that's searchable. People that are like, I want to buy some jewelry for, my niece that loves soccer. Like they might be looking for soccer jewelry, and that's something that might be doing well on something like that.
So are you using Google Keyword Tracker, or like how are you looking at those search terms and kind of figuring out if it's something? Because obviously we have a niche identified. How do we know that the search terms are competitive or not competitive or expensive or not expensive? Like how do you know that?
I mean, you have to just test it and see if how well it does. But yes, you can use Google Keyword Finder. Actually, I don't know what the latest tool is that's very popular on that. But Google Shopping ads are very smart in that if you have your data on your data feed that has the name of your product, the description of the product, Google will pull keywords based off of the information you provide. You don't have to send them necessarily a list of keywords, though you can and you probably should, but even if you don't have that list of keywords, Google will generate it for you.
Oh, okay. Nice. Nice. And so when you grab these products that you're drop shipping on the site, are you calling these companies, or are you like meeting them in person, or how do you find the product? How do you first find them, and then how do you kind of like connect with the owners or the distributors of those products?
When I was first starting, I worked, like I said, I when I first started, I had a dropship model, but we eventually moved into private label. But when I was dropshipping, it was I had two or three main suppliers. One of them was based in the US, and they were a major manufacturer of sports equipment in our niche. And I found them just by searching. I looked up, okay, who are the major players in this industry, go into their website and seeing if they already have like an established dealer program or reseller program already, because a lot of companies do. This particular company, they already had, like, they didn't call it a dropship program, they called it a dealer program where you can take sales and then pay them directly. And then you keep the customer contact, but they handle all the fulfillment and logistics on the back end.
Nice. I love that model because it's like it's very not a lot of upfront cost, right? And like you said, you can just try out the products, right? Because unfortunately for this Amazon private label business model, you really have to pony up $5,000-$10,000 to get that product in, right? Because you have to buy 500, 1,000, 2,000 units at a time, and so you to just test something is like $5,000-$10,000, and it's great to have this mentality of like, yeah, just throw a little bit of money at it and like test it. But the dropship model, it's more like throw an hour of your time at it or a few hours of your time rather than like $10,000, right?
Yes, yes.
Nice. So did you gather? So you have mostly through Google Ads, but then are you doing social media or any other kind of like marketing outside? Also, you have the contact information, so I'm guessing you're remarketing to them with email marketing, right?
Yes. From the beginning, my strategy was to make a content driven business. So it's a content driven e commerce store. So a lot of blogging, a lot of email marketing, video tutorials on how to use the product. The way that we stood out is by providing value on top of just the product itself. So why do you buy from us? Because we give you a exercise guide that you can use with this exercise product. Not That's adding value over buying directly from the manufacturer, over buying from a different reseller as well. So from the very beginning, it's been about that. That develops your trust with your customers, that gets them to come back to your site by having valuable information. It's like they see you as the source of truth and source of information.
Nice. I love that. See, that's the big key there is we provide value. So in this the provide economic value, and and you get economic return in return, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure you're doing something special, providing a new product, providing training, providing digital downloads, providing some ease, right? Removing friction from the transaction, giving security, giving reassurance of whatever it is that they're doing. These things are all value add options, right? And so I love the fact that you produce the content, you give guides and stuff like that. That's the value. That's the core thing that we're kind of like creating for the world. And then, of course, when you create that value, you want to build some sort of trap, some sort of net that you can create that value, put it into the world, and return some of that back to you as economic return, which is profit, right? So that's fantastic. I love that. So you build up your store, get your content going. Why don't you tell us a little bit, like, if we want to do that for ourselves, what kind of, like, how much content do we need? How big does our email list have to be? I know it depends, but like in general, how much do you think we would need to kind of like start making a little bit of money doing this kind of stuff?
I that is really hard to say because it really does depend so much. How competitive is your niche? How long is it going to take you to rank in SEO for these topics, for whatever you're writing about, whatever your content is based on? Um, yeah, it really it takes time. This is not something that you're going to be able to set up and start making money right away. It could take 6 months before you really start getting traction on some of this stuff. So it's definitely not a short term game, it's a long term game building up content. So you need to be prepared for that going in and have that mentality, knowing that it's going to take potentially a long time before you see a return on that time that you put into it.
Interesting. What do you have, like, if someone's going to get started and they were going to invest 6 months or 12 months or whatever, and they have the medium long term horizon in sight? Would you suggest like one blog a day, or like one a week, or like just a lot of small articles, or like one giant meaty article twice a month?
So what you write about is way more important than how much you write. So researching what type of topics are competitive, what you could actually rank for, what are people actually searching for, that is critical to before you even start writing. So you have to make that plan going into it. There is an SEO course that I took that was great in showing you how to structure articles, basically, like how to make pillar articles that cover, important topics in your niche, and then how to make supporting articles that feed off of those. You want to make a blueprint of what you're going to write about, what things are going to be structured in which ways, how you're going to link between articles, all of that going into it.
Good. Okay, so it's all more about what rather than how much. Then good. Do you remember
Yes,
the course, the title of the course, or the link to the course, the SEO course?
it's called Click Minded.
Click Minded. Good. Okay, so Click Minded. We'll make sure to have a link in the show notes. So that's good. So the nice thing too is that I love hearing the stuff isn't just about selling private label on Amazon using the FBA model, because these strategies, these tactics, they work for all the e-commerce brands, right? So you can write blogs for your niche, you can do SEO, you can do all these different things. So these are great complements to anybody who's doing that traditional FBA private label model. But so Elaine, you started out just drop shipping, just blogging and drop shipping, and then you said that you went into private label. So you can tell us like why you made that journey and how you did it.
Yes. So I started out just drop shipping just out of ease, but I always wanted to build our own brand. It just goes hand in hand with you're building the content. People know who you are. It makes sense that you get your own branding on these products that we're selling. It was just a natural transition for us. And also we wanted to be able to provide a little more control over what we were selling, have everything really look nice, elevate the packaging, provide a better experience for our customers. So we transitioned to private labeling with our dropship supplier, actually. So we had a great relationship with them, worked with them for many years, and they helped us move into the import. We got a 3PL and started fulfilling from our own warehouse space, which was a big upgrade in terms of the customer experience.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So it was the factory in China, or a factory, or like a distributor in the US?
We worked with the factory in China. We did also work with the distributor in the US, the one I mentioned before. However, we ran into issues with them not having stock. So because because we were part of their dropship program, whenever there are any kind of inventory limitations, we are the first people that get cut. If they have a ton of, sales on their own, why are they going to give their sales to us when they have such limited inventory? So this was really throttling our business because we have our customers, we're advertising, we're spending money, spending a lot of time getting customers, and then we're getting turned away by our supplier because they can't keep up with the demand. So that's our opportunity that we found is okay, we need to make these products ourselves so we have control over the supply chain, we can fulfill the demand and continue our business success. Like we're not able to sell our main products because they're out of stock, and that wasn't acceptable. So that's another push to moving to that private label for us.
Oh wow. So it's really just a controlled supply chain rather than like some like desire to build a brand.
It's a combination of both. So we had already started the private labeling of certain products before the whole inventory issues with our other supplier, because we have a range of products. So some of them we had already moved into private labeling just for the brand aspect, but some of these other products that were a little bit more difficult to source, we kind of got pushed into doing it because of these issues.
Interesting. Cool. Huh. Yeah, it's funny because like it's a when you have your own private label, the logistics are kind of a pain because you're like you have to do
Yeah.
it, right? But you're actually coming up from the opposite perspective where you're like, I get to do it. I get to be better than the other guys at it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. Okay, so now the we're building up to this exit that happened recently, right? But you did say that your
Yeah.
dream was to that you had your day job as a data analyst, and your dream was to go out as a digital nomad. And of course, I met you at the Digital Nomad Summit conference, right? So you did do it. So tell me the transition from like
Yes.
day job into like that forever travel thing.
Oh man, that was so scary. It was so hard to quit the day job. Like,
Yes.
ooh, that was a stressful time. Definitely uh emotionally taxing time. It's very scary to do that
What
because
was
I had
scary
been
about it?
working. It's just kind of like your loss of security.
Yeah.
I'm used to having, my stable paycheck. And even though my business was making more money than my day job at that point, I still had trouble justifying it in
Yep.
my mind. It was like, I'm walking away from this great career path where I can clearly see where I'm going to be in no 5, 10 years to something that I don't know. Is my brand just going to fizzle out? Is a competitor going to come in and just take all my business? It's like, you're taking on a huge risk. At least that's how I saw it when I quit. But I also knew it was time. Like financially, it didn't make sense for me to have the job, and I saw the opportunities were greater owning my own brand than staying in it. But absolutely, like the first 6 months, I was like, oh, maybe I should use this break as a break and go get like another degree or something. Like I was so lost in my mind. I really had a hard time like mentally transitioning from a structured schedule to forcing myself to make the most of my time as well.
Yeah, there was this weird transition period. I did the same exact thing when my online business was making the same salary as my day job, and I was an engineer, so the engineering salaries are decent, and especially in
Yeah.
California, and also the career path is clear. Like you spend
Yeah.
5 years here, you spend 3 years, you become a senior, you spend another 5 years, you become like a whatever senior two or something, whatever they call it, and then you become a manager, and managers, that they make real money, like serious
Yeah.
money, and you kind of like have to weigh that with the online business. The thing that's bad about your running your own business is that there's no guaranteed income. The thing that's great about running your own business is there's no ceiling on your income,
Yeah.
right?
That's very true.
They're in a day job, you're stuck between the lanes. You're guaranteed this much, but you're guaranteed to never go above this much, right? When your own business, no one says, "Oh, I've decided that your income is not fair market price. We're not going to give you a cost of living adjustment increase, your 2.2% cost of living increase, or whatever it is. There's no one there deciding that. You get to have your own control. You get to decide the fruits of your labor. You harvest all those fruits of your own labor, which is the big thing. It's scary though. It doesn't matter if like, no matter how logical it is, or this or that, the upside, the downside, like, it's still scary.
Oh, yeah. But it's worth it. It is definitely worth it here. I'm a couple of years out. I don't know how many years now, but it's definitely paid off.
Yes, absolutely. So you make the jump, and then you just like
Yes.
start traveling, and you're like hanging out at some boring office in Orlando, and then like the day you quit, you're like, all right, I'm hightailing it to Chiang Mai.
It took us, well, kind of. So we traveled that summer. I quit like in the spring, and then we traveled for a few months. We went to Europe for a few months. Mostly like this was my transition period where I was struggling to find my footing of like making sure that I was sitting myself down to work, because when I had my job, I didn't have free time. That wasn't a concept. It was I worked and I came home and I worked on my business until bedtime, and I woke up and I did the same thing every single day.
Yep.
So it wasn't like I had the freedom to structure when I wanted to work on my business. Whereas when I quit my job, all of a sudden I had a lot more time. And so I had to be more structured about my day. Like I had to put forth effort to control, okay, now I'm going to work on my business because I felt like I had all this freedom. I had to be a little bit more disciplined. So it took me a few months to really get into that routine.
Did you set up a structure? Like, did you wake up every day at 7 a.m. and work from 8 to 4, and then like then you're done, or was it a little bit more flexible than that?
It was a little bit more flexible than that because we were traveling as well. So it was that's like an added challenge is like, okay, now you're free, you're traveling, and you have to work and try and schedule it around the time zone differences when we were in Europe. So it just took some time to figure out. We would usually work a lot in the evenings. So we would go out and do things during the day. And then we would come home after dinner and be like, okay, this is our 4 hours that we're going to work today, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, we found that too. So it's funny because weekends stop existing.
Yes.
They're like, well, you're traveling, so you're often kind of in and around people who are also traveling, and they don't really have a set schedule, and so it's not like you have like like your friends and family have weekends, right? So sometimes, so now, like, I'm based in San Diego. Like, I end up taking my weekends, and then I don't work during the weekends. I do work during the week because everyone else is working during the week, right? When else am I gonna,
Yes.
I don't want to work when everyone else is hanging out, right? So I just get stuck into this weekend. I'm stuck in a good way into this weekend thing. When you're traveling, it's just like, it's Saturday. Okay, cool. I can take off on Tuesday and Thursday. And in fact, if I take off on Tuesday, there's no lines, or the airplane ticket
Yes.
is cheaper, So you want to take off on Tuesday and work on Sundays.
Yes, yes. It is very different when you're traveling versus now here working, sitting in Orlando. And
Yeah.
I have the same thing. Now that I'm here, I work more of a normal schedule. It just makes more sense.
Yeah. And it's what we ended up doing is, again, because the travel, the airplane tickets and stuff like that, it makes it so that you want to do the Tuesday rather than the Saturday afternoon thing, right? So we would sit down, and I kind of would book it. So we would get a nice Airbnb that had really good internet, and we would work 12 hours a day for 4 days. Right. Just, hey, let's just work
Uh-huh.
mode, we'll go out to a nice lunch, go to the nice coffee shop, and kind of like still experience cool stuff, right? But you're like booked up. We're working 12 hours the next few days, and then take 4 days off.
That's a good way to go about it.
Yeah. So like it was, yeah, I miss it. I don't know. We have a little baby now, so it's harder to travel. Plus, COVID makes everything not as much fun.
Yeah, it's put a stop to it. So, but maybe sometime soonish
I
we'll be able
hope.
to go international again.
I hope. Yeah. So Elaine, so you do so how long were you traveling for?
We traveled for a year. So when we first started, we weren't sure that we were going to do the the FEIE.
Yeah,
Maybe we could talk
330-day
about that.
rule. Yeah.
Yes, 330-day rule to get rid of your income tax in your first 105K or so income. Um, we weren't sure if we wanted to do that because that's quite a commitment to only be able to spend 30 days in the US. And we weren't sure how we were going to be able to balance managing the businesses and traveling not being in the US, because there are some things that you just need to be in one place to do, like sourcing samples, just dealing with issues. Sometimes you just need to be in one place for a prolonged period of time to be able to sort out problems and just things that come up, work on projects. It can be hard to work on big projects if you only have little time here and there. Sometimes you just need a big block of stuff. Um, so we weren't sure if we wanted to do it, but after going to the Digital Nomad conference, learning more about it, seeing that you guys were doing it and loving it, we decided let's just do it. And so we ended up traveling for the rest of 2019. So we spent almost the whole year traveling.
I remember twisting your arms a little bit. I was like, look at the savings you get if you travel for a whole year, 330 days. You don't have to pay income tax, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. If you guys want to learn more about that, episode 6. It's a whole episode about how to do that. If you're a U.S. citizen and you travel for 330 days outside of the U.S., any properties in the U.S., then no taxes, no taxes on the first 100,000. And for a married couple, it's 100 each. So my wife and I got 220, 210, something like that off of our taxes, which is really nice. So it's like fantastic. I love it. So you do that full year of travel. And what was like the hardest part of that trip?
It was definitely balancing the work and the play for sure. That was very hard. We wanted to be able to do all of these things, especially when you're meeting other travelers that don't have your
Yeah.
same work obligations that you do. It's like, oh man, I would love to go see the temples in Mexico, but I have this project I've been putting off for weeks and I have to do this. And there was a lot of sacrifice, and it's just some of the trade-off of working while you're traveling is having to make those sacrifices. But I also enjoy the stability that having some work while you're traveling gives you, because I've also traveled when I was in college. I did like a backpack and hitchhike trip in
Nice.
Europe. And I didn't have any work at that time. It was just pure travel, which was a ton of fun, but also a little bit aimless
Yeah.
sometimes. Like, I'm going from one place to another. I'm getting to see all these things. It's awesome. But having some work to do really, I find, grounds me when I'm traveling.
Yeah, that's what we found too. Is that a lot of people would tell us, "Oh, wow, travel for that long, doesn't it get boring or lame or tiring or whatever?" And it does a little bit. Yeah, it does a little bit. But the nice thing is that we had something to do, right? So we'd work. Probably didn't work a full 40 hours a week, but 30, I don't know, 25,
Yeah.
30, 35, like a good, and they're good work hours too. No one's checking to see if I'm like, are you
Yeah.
sitting at your desk right now? Like no one cares, right? So they're like good solid 25, 30 hours of working. And then, there's 150 hours in a week. So you got to do human things for 50 of them, work for 30 of them. And that gives you the other half of your time is all fun and travel and do cool things and experience new things.
Absolutely. It was fun. I would love to do that again sometime.
So people always ask me my favorite country, which I don't like that question because I'm like, well, yeah, okay. I get that question all the time. So I want to ask you, what's the
Yes.
most interesting question? What was the biggest surprise? What's the biggest surprise country?
We loved Malaysia. We ended up staying there almost 6 months of the whole year that we were gone
Wow.
because we loved it so much.
Wow. What'd you like so much
We
about
loved
it?
we um as we started traveling, like, maybe a few months into it, we put a little bit more priority on the work because we were seeing the impact of not working in our sales numbers. So we realized, okay, we have to buckle down and find a better routine. And so we made a really big emphasis on finding good co-working spots. And we found this great co-working spot that we absolutely loved in KL in Kuala Lumpur, and it was called the Sandbox, and it was in like a small suburb outside the city, like not a place where digital nomads really go, but where there's a lot of local remote workers. And they were some of the nicest people we met anywhere, and they were so welcoming, and we made friends there, and it was very motivating. They were just really hard workers. There was another guy that was also in e-commerce doing insane sales numbers who was very inspiring for us. So we built a little community there, and so we ended up staying there way longer than we intended, but it was great because we were able to be productive and make the most of our time there.
Nice. I love it. I remember chatting to you when you guys were there too. And we were like, or am I going to see you in Philippines? Am I going to see you in Taiwan? Am I going to see you in China? Am I going to see you in Georgia? And you went to the Canton Fair though. We saw you guys there at Canton Fair, right?
Yes. Yes, we did. That was awesome too.
Yeah, it was great. You didn't actually source anything from the Canton Fair, but you at least enjoyed the process of it.
I did source some
Oh, you
stuff.
did? Okay, cool. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
talked to you about it. And you said that you didn't quite find the things you were looking for, but I guess you did then.
It took me a little bit to purchase from them because I didn't need it right away, but I ended up buying some stuff from a couple contacts that I found maybe about 4 to 6 months after I left.
Oh, wow, cool. Tell us about that. So Canton, so in case anybody doesn't know, Canton Fair is a giant trade show in Guangzhou, China, which is kind of the southeast side of China. It's, I believe, the largest trade show in the entire world. So tell us, like, how did you find a supplier, and and you said it took 6 months. Why did it take 6 months?
I mean, yeah, it was wild. The fair was way bigger than I ever imagined. Like any kind of manufacturer for like almost anything you can think of, you can find at the fair. So you're meeting with the manufacturers, and also a lot of trading companies are there as well. And that was really wonderful to be able to see people in person, to be able to look at the products right there without having to order samples. You can compare different booths for the same product, get a sense of what companies sell, like what type of quality of things. So it was a really valuable experience, and also just eye opening to the world of international trade and just how many companies are sourcing their stuff from China and how established these supply chains are. It's really wild. Definitely worth the trip if you can make it out there when they reopen those fairs. But I wasn't sure that I would be able to find my products because some of my products are so niche that they weren't at the fair. So the fair is great for a lot of just almost anything you can think of that's in a normal household setting. But if you make something that is customized, unique, like very not super well known product, maybe something newer, they might not have an established manufacturer for that at the Canton Fair. But there were suppliers for like the raw materials that I needed. So I got those contacts, but it took me a long time to actually source the products, primarily because we were traveling, because it was something that I needed to be able to coordinate with the 3PL, which is something that I had trouble doing until I made it back to the States. So it was just kind of me traveling, dealing with the difficulties of coordinating things back in the US when I'm abroad. It just took me longer than I would have liked to be able to get them. But one of those suppliers, we still use today. And it was great to be able to meet them. It's better pricing than you can find anywhere online right now that I'm aware of. So it's definitely worth the trip.
Yeah, it's incredible that trip. That was the trip that was just utterly eye opening for me. So speaking of what we talked about earlier about how me like quitting my job and how like scary it is. I actually didn't properly quit when I quit. I asked for a
Oh,
sabbatical,
oh okay. I see.
and my boss was
I
like,
would have done the same thing.
and my boss was like, he's like, a sabbatical. That's not a thing that we do. And I'm like, can you make it a thing that you do? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, are you, what if their job isn't here when you come back? And I'm like, yeah, I want to take that risk. And when I said that, he's like, oh, wow. Okay. You're like serious about this. Then I'm like, yeah, super serious. And the reason why I wanted to take that sabbatical is that I wanted to go to the Canton Fair. I read all these cool things about how it's like the place to be. It's like all these factories. Exactly what you just said, Elaine, is exactly why I wanted to go there. And I actually did not find any factories for me the first time I went to the fair. The thing that was eye opening is when I went, there's a couple of I went for 2 weeks, and I literally spent like 12 hours every single day walking up and down the fair just because I was like, I'm here, I'm working, I need to get this done. Like, this is what we do, this is why I came here. I'm like kind of pausing my day job to make this thing work, right? And so I was hustling. I actually didn't really find anything at the fair that worked for us at the time. However, it was the networking. It was exactly what you said, seeing the supply chain, seeing all these people coming, seeing how serious this thing is, how serious it can be, and then meeting up with random people afterwards just for a couple of beers. I'm like, I don't know if I should go out to that. Like, I'm here to work. Like, I'm here, like, working is me doing boring stuff all day at the fair. And I went out to these networking events where I just like sat and had a couple beers with people. And we sat down, and I was really excited because at that point I think I was just about to hit about 1 million in annual revenue, right? So I was like feeling really super cool. Like, we're maybe at that point I was maybe 800,000 trailing 12 months, right? Which is very, that's great. Everyone who's at that point, you're great. You're good job being there. But I thought I was like super hot shit, right? Sit down at this, like, just some Facebook group. Someone said, hey, let's go get some beers, whatever. And a bunch of people who were in their late 20s and 30s, we all sat down and were just drinking a beer at Party Pier in Guangzhou. And we start talking, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing 800,000. Yeah, that's right. 800,000 revenue. And everyone's like, wow, good for you, man. That's so cool. And I'm like, well, how about you guys? You guys got anything legit? They're like, yeah, I just, just crossed over the multi 7-figure mark. And I was like, wait, what? In what? They're like, yeah, in
Yes.
revenue. And I'm like, what? How do you, what? How, what? Do you have like a giant company you're working for? Like, nope, just me. And I have my wife helps out half time, and I have one assistant in the Philippines. I'm like, oh my God. And I met, like, I met, whatever, of the 12 people I met, 9 of them were all 7-figure sellers. They're all in their late 20s. They're all doing this like part-time. They're traveling a little bit. They're doing this. They have some other gig going on too. And I'm like, oh my God, this is real. Like, people do this, and it's like a real
Yeah.
business.
Yes, I had a similar experience at that Amazon meetup in Guangzhou as well. We sat down at a table, and it was like 4 dudes that, we were chatting, and, I knew that we were smaller back then. Like, we were doing maybe 700K in sales around then, which is not small, but not not the level that you see at the Canton Fair. That's small for the Canton Fair. So the one guy
That's
was
like,
like, "Yeah, I think we did
maybe,
like."
yeah, that's like intro level. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. The one guy is like, "Yeah, we do 11 million around there annually in lighting fixtures or something like that." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is crazy." Just to be able to, sit and have a beer with them and chat with them about what their everything that goes into their business, their logistics is like very, very eye opening.
Yeah, guys. And this, I think this is a testament here. Go out, put yourself out there. Even if you're introverted, it can kind of suck a little bit putting yourself out there, but go out, meet people, meetup groups. Conferences are incredible. They're starting to open back up now. The Prosper Show is the show in Vegas. It's the first or second week in July, which kind of is a bad month to be in Vegas, but
Yeah.
it's the show is one of the first, like, real conference, I think, that I've seen for the e-commerce sellers. Put yourself out there. Go to those meetups. Go to those conferences. Travel. Take a few vacation days to go to these conferences and pony a couple $100 to go. It's absolutely incredible.
Absolutely.
So, Elaine, okay, so we've gone from our high school little girl setting up her shop and making a couple $100, a couple $1,000 on the side, which is incredible. Then moving into going to the juggling the day job thing, and the working all day and working all night. And then the jump into e-commerce and doing the full travel thing. And now, of course, we come to the pinnacle of the story. What happened recently in your e-com journey?
Oh yeah. So we've recently exited. I've sold my business, and um, I have closed that chapter, at least for this particular brand. So it was a wild journey in being able to do that.
Yay! All right, that's fantastic. Yes, you exit, successful exit. Okay, so we have to dissect that a little bit. Now, I
Yes.
know you have lots of NDAs, you have lots of confidentiality agreements. It's a good enough, big enough chunk of money that Elaine has to be a little secret and a little private with these numbers, because there's NDAs and confidential agreements and stuff like that around these stuff. But you tell us, Elaine, but it's a good big
Yes,
chunk
definitely.
of
Oh
cash,
yeah.
right?
It's more than I would ever have thought. But yes, so I found out that even this was even a possibility when we were traveling at the Nomad Summit.
Yep.
The brokerage called Empire Flippers had a booth there. And that was my first, I guess, conversation with a broker where I learned that it was even possible to sell an online business because, yeah, I knew I was making some money. I was able to support myself, travel, doing well, but I didn't know that I could sell this and get even more money by selling a business. Like this was like mind blowing for me that this is a possibility because I didn't see what that future held for me before I met these people. And then I realized, okay, if I reach the point where I no longer want to do this, I have a path out. And that was motivating for me as well because I was like no longer on a path to nowhere. I saw the end goal. So it took me a couple of years to be ready to actually exit. But last year, the pandemic happened, and it was really crazy for our business. We had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of growth, but also like some serious challenges in managing that. it grew to a point where I needed to hire more people, but I don't particularly enjoy managing a lot of people. It was never my goal in starting this business to manage like a big team. Like I never wanted like a huge business, and managing people is a big responsibility, especially the more people that you manage, it's just a lot of balls to juggle, and it's not always I have all the respect in the world to the people that are able to fully automate their business and outsource all the tasks and like can work only, a few hours a week and make that work. That was not me. I did not have that skill set. So I was still, very busy managing everyone and still like it was a lot of work and I was getting burnt out. And I knew that it was like, okay, now is probably a good time for me to consider moving on to other opportunities. So I met with a broker, actually with Quiet Light Brokerage last summer, and I really loved the guy I was working with. He was very, very detail oriented. He asked very, very probing questions, really got to understand the business, the strengths, the weaknesses. And I felt like I got a very tailored valuation for the business because he really dove into the details. And I appreciated that. And he told me that I needed to get some things in order to be able to sell. Like I needed to um, outsource some of the things that I was doing at the time. Like I had a really hard time keeping people on board for customer service. And I had just had like two people quit like a week before I talked to him. So I knew that I was probably going to have to, hire more people before I would be able to get there. But it was still very helpful to hear that from him and to also hear his advice on exactly like what kind of things that add value to your business, because he helped me really narrow down. Like I had a huge to-do list of things that I wanted to do, like growing our wholesale portal or growing our Amazon business. And he was able to say, look, you should work on this, this, and this instead of these other things, because this is going to add the most value based off of where you're at right now. So that consultation. So he said to work on my wholesale portal if I could, to work on streamlining my logistics and getting all of the products possible into the 3PL, instead of my logistics were a little bit messy. And also to work on getting my accounting in order, like getting it super organized and on an accrual basis to be able to pass that off easily.
Those are good. Those are good pieces of advice to give someone. So those, I think those are important for everyone. So just make sure to kind of like clean up a few things and make the handoff easy. And the big one, books. I think every single person I've met who's at that level of like doing well, but not like giant, their books are usually pretty bad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hiring a good bookkeeper, an accountant, whatever is definitely a good step in that direction.
Yes, and he was able to tell me also, like, you can leave these opportunities on the table. Like, you don't need to have a perfect business to be able to sell, because buyers are looking for opportunities where they can add their value. So, like, our Amazon is a weak channel for us, a weaker channel. And so, a buyer that has expertise in Amazon more than I do would see that as an opportunity potentially. So, I don't need to necessarily try and build that skill set up. Whereas I can focus on these other things that are already doing moderately well that have a good return, because some of these factors directly impact your valuation. Like wholesale business is usually a little bit of a higher multiple, as well as recurring revenue is also a higher multiple. So we had a ancillary, it's the same business, but ancillary product of a online class platform that was a subscription service. So he said, if you can build that up, that also will add to your valuation because that will be a source of recurring revenue.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I never thought about that. Like actually building up a class around the brand. That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
So you meet with them. They give you a little bit of advice, and that I guess you then spend about I guess that would, you said last summer, so maybe like 10 months to build it up, and then you decide to go back to the broker. And I think you decided to go with Empire Flippers, right?
I decided to go with Quiet Light.
Quite
So
like
I
okay,
spent
cool.
it was about maybe like 7 months for me to get everything in order. Our plan, once I talked to him, was I want to sell in the new year, maybe around February. So that will get me, I'll have been doing my business for about 5 years. And that would give me the time that I need to get people up to speed. Take some time, especially in our industry, to get people to the level of expertise needed to be able to replace me on some of the product knowledge type of things. So I spent the 7 months, worked my ass off, got everything in order, worked so hard, and February came around. I reached back out to my advisor at Quiet Light and I said, hey, I'm ready to sell my business. And he said, that's great. I'm busy right now. I'm sorry, I can't list it. I'm like, no, I really love working with this guy. I appreciated his advice. Like, he was so
Huh.
helpful, and I was so bummed that he wasn't available. He said he just had just an influx of deals. Like, everyone was trying to list their business in February. Like, it was crazy time to try and sell. But he said I could talk to one of his colleagues, a different advisor at Quiet Light, which is Jason at Quiet Light, instead, if I wanted to still work with Quiet Light. And I thought about it. I had talked to Empire Flippers as well, and I had talked to somebody at Acquisitions Direct as well. And I just had such a great experience with the first advisor at Quiet Light. And I also had been following their podcasts. They have really great podcasts that I recommend checking out if you're planning to sell your business, and their blogs. So I felt really confident in working with them, and I wanted to still work with them. So I accepted the offer to work with this other advisor who was one of the most senior advisors on their team and was had a very different approach than the first guy, but also like extremely knowledgeable and extremely helpful. He was very direct and told me like exactly, okay, this is how it's going to work. We're going to do this, this, and this, and had it was really wonderful to work with him as well. It's just a very different experience.
Nice.
So
Good. So what's the name of the podcast?
I think it's just Quiet Light Podcast.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. So you decide. So you go with the brokerage, and then you list your company, and then what? How many calls did you take, and how that whole? And then when you take the calls and you get the offer, how does that whole process work from call to like offer to like exit to now like Elaine's a retired old retired lady at the ripe old age of 27.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, so Jason was also very busy. So, like I said, crazy time to sell right now. And he also didn't have any availability to list my business for a couple weeks. So, while I had everything in order, I probably should have been reaching out to them more regularly and like maybe a month or two ahead of when I wanted to list. That was one thing that I would do if I did this again, was to have a little bit more closer communication going up into it. So I was like, fine, okay, I can wait a couple weeks. It'll be fine. But I was also at the same time like, I want to sell. I don't want to do this anymore. It was getting to that point where, I was ready. But because he wasn't able to get like a slot to be able to list and send out their email blast to their network of investors for a few weeks, he said, why don't we do a like soft launch on the website? So we can list your business on our website, and people that are actively looking for businesses will browse and maybe see yours, and we might get a trickle of calls coming in the couple weeks leading up to when we actually do the official launch and email blast. So we listed on the website, and we heard crickets. Absolutely nobody called. Like, he got a few emails, but almost nothing. And another challenge that we had was that we had planned to have our business be SBA loan eligible. So SBA loan is a government-backed loan where a buyer can acquire a business at a favorable interest rate loan from the government, which makes it much more. It makes it much more affordable to acquire a business and a lower risk. But we had been planning this whole time that our business should be SBA eligible. It's an older business. I've held it for 5 years. We've had steady growth over that time. The other advisor didn't anticipate any issues with that. But what we found is when we tried to get eligible, the banker said that there was an increased risk due to COVID and they wouldn't approve us. So we had to look for a cash buyer or offer seller financing only. So that narrowed our pool of buyers down significantly.
Yeah, the SBA, SBA, I know a lot of people who have gone through the SBA route, but now that I've talked to more and more people, I find that SBA is really difficult to do. There's like, they find the weirdest things too. Like if your profit's increasing, but your revenue is decreasing, ineligible. If your
Yeah.
revenue is increasing and your profit's decreasing, ineligible. I'm like, but even if it's like 3%, it doesn't have to be like if everything halves, I get why that would be bad. But if it's like a 5% decline, they don't want that. So it's a great deal if you can get an SBA backed loan, but it's difficult.
Yes, yes. That's my impression as well. Like, it's hard to get approved, and then there's additional complexities. Like, there's only a few bankers that really reliably approve or disapprove you. Like, I've heard horror stories of people getting approved, I'm saying in quotation marks, from a banker, but then they find out, they accept the offer and they find out months into the deal that actually the government won't accept it and it falls apart. So it's definitely risky, and you want to make sure that you're working with a banker that's very reputable and in terms of approving people up front or not.
Yeah, for sure. So you didn't go with an SBA loan. You found a cash buyer. How did that transaction happen, or the process when you like
Yeah.
sign the letter of intent and then you like go forward with
Yeah. So, like I said, we had crickets for we
that?
had crickets for the first 2 weeks that we listed. So I am over here like so nervous about the process because I wasn't expecting that. Like I was told, okay, going into this, you'll probably have, 10, 12 buyer calls. Then you might have 3 or 4 offers. You could pick between those, which one's the best. But we heard almost nothing. But finally, when our email blast time came around, then we had interested people. So it just took that blast of sending it out to their investment list. Then we had people interested. So we had, I think, maybe about 5 serious callers that I talked to, mostly like investment firms, some individual buyers as well. And we had a handful of calls. It was over the course of about like a week and a half. Some of them I had multiple calls with, and they all had very different approaches to the types of questions they were asking, which I found very interesting. They cared about different things. They had different business models and different things that they were looking for in businesses that they were acquiring. It's very interesting. Enjoyable. I really liked speaking to the buyers. It was a good time. It was very exciting those 2 weeks. It was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is going to be the one. It was fun, and we ended up having 2 firms that were going to make offers, and the first one made an offer that was a little bit under asking price, and the second one was like, okay, we'll be in with the offer the next day. But the first firm wanted their response like the same day, and so we were kind of like put in the middle between, okay, do we wait on this offer or do we take this first offer that we had that's very good? So we came back to the first offer and said, hey, like we have another firm that's interested. If you bump it up to full price, we'll take your deal. They said yes. I took my
Nice.
full price offer, and yeah, we 30 days later we closed.
Nice. Awesome. Did you ever get a response from the second buyer?
Um, I am actually not sure. I think that we told them that we had accepted
Ah, okay.
the first offer. My broker handled that one.
Nice. Wow. Cool. Okay. So then so really the price was the driving factor for you, right? You didn't want to like, oh, I trust these guys or these guys or these ones have the brand fit. It was really just the kind of the actual exit price, right?
I mean, that was important as well, like making sure that the buyer was the right buyer. Like I didn't really talk about that, but that is absolutely important. So there were several buyers that I was like, maybe I wasn't sure about them. Like I thought that, you know, I wasn't sure that they had the resources there to be able to run this. Like wasn't sure about the background, especially like the one individual buyer. I just wasn't feeling wasn't feeling it for that one particular buyer. But it was the firm that purchased it had like a emphasis on like health and wellness businesses, so it definitely was like aligned in terms of their motivations and goals with it.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. So you get you go through you accept the offer, go through due diligence, and then you just like after like 30 days, you just give them the login to your account and you just like say good luck and then just leave, or how does that work?
So there's a 30-day due diligence period
Uh,
where the buyer will come back to you with any questions they have. So that's the time where they are really, really digging into your financials, all the product questions they have, anything that they want to ask, they're supposed to ask in those 30 days. And they can back out at any time for any reason. This is something I found so shocking in the sale process. It's not like when you're buying a house that you have like some money sitting in escrow. No, there's no money on the line. They can cancel at any time. It's so stressful as a seller because you don't know what's going to come up. And, they could cancel for any reason. The whole thing could fall through and we have to relist, talk to buyers and start the process all over again. And that does happen. People can take it can take a lot longer than you would think to sell a business if you have deals fall through for one reason or another.
Interesting. Good to know. But it does go through. well, right? You go
Yes.
through that due diligence period, and then what happens after the due diligence? It's just it's like a 30-day
Yep.
handoff, or is it like you're still working with them?
So every deal is different. In our case, it was a handoff. So I didn't really want to continue working on the same business for a long term because I kind of want to move on to some other opportunities I have. So we have a 90-day transitionary period. And the way that we structured it up front would be that there would be a couple weeks of really intensive training, hand holding, basically going through everything, doing introduction, and then slowly, less and less tasks on my plate over those 3 months to where I'm no longer involved or I'm just as needed. You can call me. So I try to make that really upfront. Like I want to see this continue to be successful. I want to make sure that we are maintaining the same standards that we built the brand based off of, continuing to provide the high quality products and services that our customers expect. Like that's very, very important to me that the new buyers are going to continue to grow it in a way that I support and that aligns with our brand.
Nice, awesome, great. So 90-day support, and then you're just sayonara, or
And
could
then,
they hire you back on as like a
yeah,
consultant later?
they could. I don't know that I'm like against that option, but right now I have some other things that I'm hoping to be able to move on to, or and also just trying to take a break. So it's
Sure,
taken up a lot of my
sure.
brain space. So I'm wanting a little bit of time off.
Nice. Cool. That actually segues into our next part I was going to ask you about. So now we've learned about the successful exit. It's a good chunk of change. We can't disclose exactly how much, but it's a good chunk. It's enough that Elaine can take a nice break for quite a while. What's next? What are you going to do next? Another business? Just take some time off? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm still sorting that out. I'm still
Yeah.
sorting out exactly what that looks like, but I've been planning trips, been visiting family and friends. It's
Nice.
been awesome just to even have a little bit of, I'm still fresh. I'm only like a month out of the sale, so I'm
Wow.
only now getting to experience days where I'm not getting emails, which is like
Yeah.
I realize I don't it's been years. It's been years since I've gone days
Yeah.
without answering emails, like even weekends. So it's been amazing.
Nice. And then so the thing that I think is going to happen with you, take this time to breathe and think and analyze and take the breath, the breath month, or the breath half a year or whatever, right? You now know how to do these things. You now know the path to get to an exit, and you now have a little bit of cash too that you can invest, and you can take bigger risks. That was a big thing that's really tough. That day job, that security of having that that paycheck come in, that few $1,000 paycheck on a W-2 come in every month is really nice security. But when you have these kind of exits, now you have enough security that you have new security. You have like a different kind of security, right? And it's even bigger and better, and allows you room to take risks. So I'm excited to see what happens in 2022 for you.
I'm excited too.
Awesome, Elaine. Cool. Like, let's jump into our three questions we like to ask everybody. So we talked about it a little bit, but I want to hear, what's your big why? Why did you, if you want to sum it up, why did you want to get away from that 9 to 5 and jump into this like digital nomad lifestyle?
Yeah, for me, it has always been about independence and having control over my own time and my location independence. When we were first starting, we had these two printouts above our desk that was financial independence and location independence. So those are our two goals getting started. But as the business grew, our goals and our motivations definitely evolved with it. So I became really connected with our customers and meeting their needs, and they really kept me going. So those goals got me started, but hearing the feedback from our customers, being able to make products that improve their lives and incorporate their feedback was motivating. And I always was answering my customers and trying to meet their needs whenever we could.
Nice. So financial, time, location, independence, and then of
Yeah.
course then engaging with the customer. I love that. What when you hit those goals, I'm not sure if you're quite there, but like if you do hit those, do you have a big they call a big, what is it, big hairy audacious goal, a BHAG? Yeah, big hairy audacious goal, a BHAG. Do you have another BHAG?
Yeah, I don't know. So I am interested in getting more into real estate. I know it's not super related. It's not like I don't know if this is my big, hairy, audacious goal, but that's one of my next steps, some things that I'm looking into, taking on some different types of investments and looking at different types of ventures that are not necessarily e-commerce. Not that I'm done with e-commerce. I'll probably be back making more brands at some point in the future, but exploring different opportunities. I want to learn more, put a focus on just like personal development over the next few years.
Real estate's a great place to go. We have a bunch of stuff in real estate too, so it's a good place. And it's different. It's funny. Real estate isn't as exciting because if I told someone that I had a 25% return on my invested cash, like in the e-commerce world, that's not very exciting. You're like, oh wow, you put $10,000 in and you made like $2,000 this year. Like that's not that cool, So it's not as like fun to tell people that. But when you tell people
Yeah.
outside of the ecom world, you're like, yeah, you experience a 20%, 50%, 80% return on the cash invested in these real estate projects. Like people are like, oh my god, it's incredible. So it's a different style, different kind, but it's a little bit more reliable and a little bit more real in the sense that it's real estate, right? But it's a great place to get into.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Very exciting. What is one piece of media that you can share with everybody today? A book, a podcast, a website, anything kind of fun to share with people?
Yeah, one thing I've been enjoying is the Demand Curve newsletter
Oh,
from Julian Shapiro. I don't know if you follow him, but it's great insights on it's not like necessarily Amazon specific, but it has good e-com tips, unique marketing tips that you can borrow from different industries and apply to yours and get a little bit more innovative with your marketing.
I love that. I have not heard about that. It's just a weekly newsletter.
Yeah, weekly, maybe a little bit less than weekly, but yeah.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, we'll have a link in the show notes for the listeners. And Elaine, leave us here with the one piece of actionable thing, an actionable item that an e-commerce seller can do today.
I would say prepare for your eventual exit sooner than later if that is on your goal list, because the earlier prepare, the easier it will be, and you will be able to exit whenever you feel like it. You won't have to continue working longer than you want to if you have all your books in order. So if you already have an established business, that might mean going ahead and meeting with an advisor, even if you're not necessarily wanting to sell for a couple of years. Just go ahead, get a valuation, like see where you stand, get those tips that they might be able to offer you on what channels you can grow to get the maximum value out of your business. Or if you're just getting started, do a little bit of research about that. If that's something you see as like an eventual end goal, like checking out the Quiet Light podcast, for instance, or just reading a little bit more about that process so that you can make sure that as you're building your business, you have your processes in place, you have it as transferable as possible, and you're focusing on the right things to add the most value to your business.
Boom. I love it. I love it. Plan for the exit, guys. That is our action item. Check it out. See what kind of valuation you might have. You might be shocked at what kind of payday you might be in order for. Or maybe you're not quite there yet and you figure out how to get there eventually. So go check it out, guys. Elaine, I love that piece of advice. Thank you so much for being here. We learned about how you started out as a hustler in high school hustler. There you go. Hashtag high school hustler. And it's right on Etsy. Went to that day job, built up your blog and drop shipping website in the evenings, became a digital nomad, and then just had a successful exit. And now we're going to see what is next and we have the next chapter open in your life. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for being here, Elaine.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. Appreciate your time.
I hope you enjoyed that content, and I'm going to have a small ask for you. If you have not left us a review, iTunes is where you go to leave your feedback for us. Just like a product review on Amazon, you have to get those reviews to get that rank, to get people to see your stuff. It's the same way on iTunes. These reviews really help us spread the message. So if you found any value at all, please go to iTunes right now. Open your phone, go to iTunes, pop it in, give us a review. I'm going to read one of my favorite ones here. Daniel PK said, excellent content that you can't find anywhere else. Andrew has incredible guests on that have a diverse range of expertise. Some of the content you may be able to find on some of our podcasts. However, a good chunk of the content, whether it's guests or topics or expertise, you can only find on this podcast. You won't find anywhere else. Highly recommend for folks already involved in e-commerce. So Daniel PK, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting people know that this podcast brought value to you. And if this podcast brought value to you, the audience, the listener right now, you, yes, you, I'm talking to you, please go to iTunes and leave us a review.